back. I'm here talking with Albert Garcia about preventive health, and we were just talking about you were talking about the pH.
Yeah, well, the acid pH balance.
Acid pH balance, and this is the only thing that I've read of the things that I do that is controversial. That you know, some people say that pH doesn't mean anything, and other chemists say that it does. I kind of prefer the idea that I will drink alkaline water and take alkaline pills.
It won't harm you.
It doesn't hurt me.
But perhaps the expectations would far exceed the actual benefits that you might have.
Right.
Depending on which school of thought that you subscribe to. But once you drink anything, the body will neutralize most everything.
Right.
But at the same time, it won't harm anyone by drinking what they feel is what is good for them. Don't forget, much of it is on the mind, right?
Oh, I wanted to touch on that too.
But talking about the pH and acid balance of the body, I mean, when you take, for example, supplements like ABW, right, which contains alfalfa, barley, and wheatgrass. What these plants have in common is an enzyme, a very powerful enzyme called superoxide dismutase, or SOD for short. Now, what this enzyme does is that it strengthens it actually prevents the spread of cancer cells, right? It does not cure it, but it stops the spread. If we were to come up with an analogy, for example, Larry, of what cancer cell is, I mean, if you have a simple egg, and the white or the albumin is what keeps the egg yolk inside.
Right.
So the egg, let's say, is the cancer cells, and the albumin is there. What superoxide dismutase does, or SOD, is strengthens the white so that there is no breach.
Okay.
Once there is a breach, then that's where you say that the cancer cells have metastasized into something else, right?
Well, that's the thing. I think any cancer survivor or somebody that's had it,
like you,
right? Like myself, and this is something that probably a lot of people hear about. Boy, the person's in a fight with cancer. Well,
exactly.
I'm not in a fight with cancer. But I do the things that I think will lessen the chance of it coming back. And we all have. Once you've had it, and in my case, it's still, after they cut out the big part, it's still out there.
Yeah.
And you just watch it and hope that it doesn't get any better, it doesn't go any farther. But you can do those things just like as you're saying here, taking something that will slow it down.
What nature provides.
Right. Nature provides. Taking, like in my case, I quit eating meat, and because they said that's a 30% chance of the type of cancer I had, you know, which is bad. But then that was another point. You've mentioned enzymes, and the first time I met you, you talked about the fact you saw that I was eating mushrooms or something.
Yes.
Because,
and the enzymes
and the enzymes they replace the enzymes you lose by not eating meat, or
exactly.
It's about the same thing, right?
Vegetarians in the main, when they do not have an intake of meat has a certain enzymes, right? That is also, of course, good for the natural well-being. Now, once you stop eating meat products, especially beef, you have to compensate for the missing enzymes in your diet.
Right.
So mushrooms do provide that compensation.
I found that eating mushrooms a lot and eating lots of broccoli seems to be the balancing part of anything you lose from not eating the meat, I suppose.
I guess like everything else, Larry, I mean, our bodies are individually unique, right? Wow. Some are able to cope more with the ravages of, say, chemotherapy and things like that. Others are unable to, largely because, in my view, and I'm not a doctor, right? In my view is that the body starts off with a very weak immune system to begin with. So if one were to subject himself to chemotherapy and your immune system is already down, then it will get even worse because, as you know, it attacks everything. Now, the same thing with antibiotics, for example. Antibiotics are known to cure many things, but at the same time it's also known to kill everything. right? It's a modern-day mass murderer.
Right.
It will kill the good and the bad bacteria.
Right.
We're supposed to have an equal amount of good and bad bacteria in our system that allows us to continue on. But if you take an antibiotic, it is not non-selective. It will kill everything there. So if your system is already down, right, it takes a lot to recover from that. Now, for example, once you are subjected, you put yourself into an antibiotic regime, immediately your digestive system is challenged, right? You end up constipated.
You know, and here's a good point, Albert, that I think modern medicine, and certainly in my lifetime, I was never taught as I went along because I was never interested in that sort of thing until I was made to be interested in it. The point is that we know what's good for our bodies. Each one of us really knows it. We just don't pay attention to it a lot. And once you reach a certain point, you know if something is working or not working or is not good for you or whatever.
Larry, it has much to do with the family influences and backgrounds, for example. I mean, because of my own interests, my own family subscribes to a lot of the natural supplements, right? And it depends on what focus the family members are. But for example, in the aging process, we tend to burn a lot of our brain cells as we get along. Right? So we really need to replace that. You need to introduce more oxygen into your brain so that it regenerates itself. We talk a lot about senior moments. Right? We talk a lot about forgetting little things. Right? Where did I put myself? But that is largely a consequence of not focusing on what you're doing. Mostly because you are simply just put your eyeglasses down automatically, and then you don't remember. It could be in your head, or you could
paying attention.
But it's a question of focus.
Right.
So you should, if you are getting to that point, then you simply find a way to address that issue. Either you do mental calisthenics, you do more of the games that challenges your memory, or you can take, again, Ayurvedic type supplements that are in the marketplace, like Brain Master, for example, that provides both Bacopa, Ginkgo biloba, which are both Ayurvedic type ingredients, and you have vitamin B6 and B12, which are both intended to increase the memory capacity of the brain. Right. That's available to us. Right.
You know, this is something that I think a lot of people don't realize too. The brain is very much like muscles. You lose it, you use it or lose it. You know, and the idea is that if you don't, many people just kind of when they, especially people that have been. In your case, you're a professional, and I'm more of a professional, and so I've never been a salaried worker, so I never had the chance of retiring from something. So I probably am a little bit better off than the person who's been a salaried person for their whole life. They retire and say, "Whoa, what do I do now? Where do I go from here?" And they're not going anywhere, which is a big problem. So they've got to stay active in the brain.
That's one thing we have in common, Larry, is that we're self-employed.
Right.
People have asked me whether I'm retired or when will I retire, and I said I don't think I'll ever retire because I enjoy what I'm doing.
Well, I've never had a job, you know.
Well, I kept getting fired from all my jobs.
But it's really true, isn't it? You know.
It's true. I mean, once you remain active and don't ever, you know, give up on any of the interests that you have, and as a matter of fact, pick up new interests, right? Especially with the so-called our era, which is supposed to be the baby boomers, right? And we have reached a stage of our lives where most everyone is getting to that age, 65, 60s, and wondering where all the years went, right? And then you say, well, should I retire, and what do I do? If one did not plan ahead of time as to what you're going to do once you give up your day job, then the chances of you kicking the bucket is actually much higher than someone that remains active.
Very much so. You know, they say studying another language, even if you've never, it doesn't matter whether you master it or learn how to speak in it or anything else. Just using that part of the brain will cause it. You mentioned a while ago about oxygen, and the things that I've read about cancer is cancer hates oxygen, you know. So the more exercise you get, the better chance that you've got. Exactly. And probably, how do you oxygenate the brain, though?
Well, there are two ingredients in BrainMaster, which is, well, 4 ingredients, but 2 ingredients, which is the Bacopa minieri and the ginkgo biloba, are intended to increase the blood flow into the brain. Right. Now, I am my own guinea pig. And before we introduce any new product to the marketplace, I try it, I test it, and I find, Larry, that in the 7-8 months that I've been taking my own supplements, I have found that I have had increased ability to remember detail.
Really?
Right? Really? Increased ability to remember people's names, and sometimes without even consciously thinking about it, it just pops out. Right? And I surprise myself sometimes. Right?
Oh wow! You know, that's for me. The big thing is names. And certain words, which is, you know, I speak Japanese as well, and I work as an interpreter. And I rarely lose a word in Japanese, but I lose words in English all the time, which is really
maybe
strange.
Maybe it's because your brain is now affixed to the Japanese language more than English.
Well, that, or maybe I'm paying more attention, you know, to the Japanese rather than the English. It should be there, so it shouldn't be a problem.
Let me ask you something. When you speak in Japanese, do you think in Japanese or you think in English and then you translate to Japanese?
I mean, I've been doing it for 40 years, and so
you're not conscious.
It's, you know, not conscious at all. I don't know because I don't think, especially in interpreting, you're just kind of, it goes in one ear and out the other ear, and if it comes in as Japanese, it goes out as English if you're speaking.
No, because I asked someone.
I never thought about it.
I asked someone the other day, as far as I mean, this person was in Toastmasters. And I asked the question of whether a Filipino who is an English speaker would think in Filipino and then translate it verbally into English.
Well, what about your case? You're a native Tagalog, right? I mean,
so I speak the language, of course.
When you speak Tagalog, you're just Tagalog, right? Or do you think English? Or?
I guess I am able to verbalize a little bit more some of the English terms than others, but don't forget, I did spend a lot of time in Australia.
That's right. You lived there for a long time.
25 years. So that perhaps influences the way I can put words together. Right. But I have difficulty in speaking proper Filipino because of, I guess it's a miseducation.
Well, for me, some things, you know, after I've lived in Japan 50 years, you know, I've been in Asia for 50 years. And the thing about a lot of it is that some things I know in Japanese and I don't know those things in English. And so it's difficult. Why would I want to even say it in English if I can say it in Japanese and the other person is understanding it? And that's why. So if I'm talking with another person that's bilingual, that's lived in Japan a long time, even another white guy, we end up speaking of what we call champon, you know,
I guess you engage your brain according to
to whatever
how
the
you're
situation
speaking,
is. It's an interesting thing, and you must have the same thing. As you say, you lived in Australia for a long time. Certain things are very Australian, right?
That's right.
And they're not something you would even want to try to say probably in Filipino, maybe.
Well, I'm a little bit more complicated because my first language was Spanish.
Oh, okay.
So that even makes me a little bit more confused than most.
Well, yeah, because they got all of these Spanish words in Filipino, but none of the grammar, you know, which is a bit of a problem. Yeah, I guess that would be a bit of a.
But again, common to any nationality, Larry, is that everybody is very conscious of trying to maintain good health.
Absolutely.
And they, you know, whether you're Spanish or you're Japanese and even more so, the Japanese have a very good health regime because of their diet and things like that. So, and there's a lot of traditional Japanese medicine as well that you know are there.
Well, they're also into not the chiropractic so much, but the OQ and all sorts of
the pressures,
shiatsu, you know, and all of the other things. But Yeah, again, I never really bought into much of that until it became kind of a necessity, and I found out all the things that I'd been missing. And this is something I would like to leave with the audience: is know yourself, and if it feels good, do it, and if it feels helpful,
right.
and find the right foods. I found that after they cut out a lot of your body, you have to adapt in certain ways, And one of the things was the reason for stopping meat wasn't just the fact that the numbers say that it's not a good idea to eat it. The fact is the body, you don't have enough plumbing to take care of it anymore.
Yeah.
And the energy that I have now is much more than I ever had before, because the body isn't spending all that time digesting food, I think,
Well,
which is...
I'm glad, because, again, you have to listen to your body, right?
Yeah.
Well, I have a saying, and I've been trying to pass on the philosophy to whoever cares to listen. And I always tell them that you have to take care of yourself, because nobody else can do a better job.
Absolutely.
Right? You cannot pass on the obligation and the responsibility to your wife, your partner, or your children, as most people are wont to do, because they say, well, take care of me while in my old age, but in the meantime I'll go and drink and make merry and all that, and largely challenge your health, knowing that you have a backup healthcare situation in somebody trying to care for you. It's quite unfair on your family.
We were talking about that the other day with another friend, and the idea was in the Philippine culture is the idea, look, I raised you, now you owe me.
Exactly.
You owe me.
Which is very unfair, really.
And it's very different from the attitude we have in the West is more or less, I owe my kids up to the time that they get out of college, because that's how long the maturation period of it. But they don't owe me anything. But I hope when they're 30 years old, they say, well, the old man wasn't so bad after all.
Well,
that's
fortunately, in the Philippines, and maybe it extends to most Asian countries, there is a stronger family environment. There's the extended family system.
Right.
It still does not give anyone license to abuse oneself.
Yeah, that's right.
Thinking that somebody will care for them, because that individual who one has tasked to care for you has a life.
Well,
right?
You hope they do.
Yeah, they have a life, and they have their own needs, and if they have to spend the rest of their lives taking care of you, I mean, that's very unfair for
this is not just in the Philippines. In the U.S., they have the same problem. People that are my age now, that are approaching 70, but they're taking care of 90-year-old parents, and having a hard time because they're having to cope with aging as well.
Yes,
and psychologically, it's a pretty tough problem.
But don't get me wrong. I'm talking about a person that will abuse himself or herself,
believing that he's going to be.
I mean, if somebody gets sick and of no fault of their own, I mean, okay, that's a different story. But I know of cases that they just drink every night and suddenly their liver doesn't function and.
Well, I think it goes back to the point again of having that responsibility, self-responsibility, and living a healthy life. Is really, really important, because you're going to live a better life.
Well, we don't know how long we're going to live, right?
And we use this word today, preventive, and we should just keep repeating that, because that's the thing that is missing in American medicine. It's just as you say, it's curative. It's all curative. There's not any preventive there. Although people are screaming about it right now.
And it all boils down to the quality of life.
Right.
From that, we don't know how long we're going to be around. And if we were to live, say, to 80 or 85, for example, and you do something to yourself that suddenly you're bedridden from the time you're 65. So you have about 20 years bedridden. That's not quality of life.
No, it isn't.
Right?
No, it isn't.
I would not wish that on anyone to
well, that's one of the decisions that you make in your own about chemotherapy and the other things. In the particular cancer I have, my first wife died of it, and did all of the chemotherapy and all the radiation, was miserable for the full 2 years that she had after the operation, where the cancer only got her for the last month. The rest of it was all of the cures the preventive things that were there. And so the quality of life, I think, is really, really important. But that, again, goes back to the individual. The individual has to be the person
Exactly,
to decide that, and that's the point that I was trying to make. Every person should sit and listen. What do I really want out of this life? Do I want a few more days, or do I want to feel good for every day that I'm here? You know?
I have friends. I have friends who are currently battling cancer, and I guess they're fortunate in that they are able to financially do what they can to try and arrest the situation. But more importantly, and credit to them, is that they have a very positive attitude towards life.
Boy, that's 80%.
Right? Yeah, very, very positive
needs to
attitude, and
understand
that is part of the cure, part of your ability to cope with you know, I guess with just the thought that something is wrong with you and that you're terminal, if you put it that way. But you know, life goes on. I mean, obviously.
On this show, I've had Bob at Santai, who's with the Carewell. He started Carewell here because his wife had cancer and his father-in-law at the same time, and they just take care. They take care of the psychosomatic or psychology part of battling cancer. They leave the medicine up to the doctors, but they have a place for these people to go, and the people live a much better quality of life during, whether they beat the cancer or don't beat it or whatever.
That's a support group, right?
Yeah, it's a support group.
Yeah.
And that really is important. And everybody, I believe that attitude is 80% of it. You know? Again,
exactly.
it's one of those things that people say, "Oh man, cancer. Oh God, you know, what are you going to do?" I've never felt threatened by the cancer itself. The operation wasn't fun, but
one of the things.
But you just do the things you can.
You mentioned about cancer and all that, but when one is sick and one is convalescing at home or in the hospital, when we do visit that person, we say, get strong. In the vernacular, we say, magpalakas ka. But that person obviously wants to get well, wants to be strong, but does not really know how to go about doing it. And this goes back to what we talked about earlier, Larry, on the balance of your pH and your acid.
Right.
The body needs to balance itself first before it's able to recover, right? Because unless your body chemistry is balanced, you will never be able to get stronger. Everything and anything you do goes to trying to fix the problem, right? And it's not yet in a position to regenerate. Right?
Yeah, and it does. One of the things that I learned after, you know, after you've been split open a couple of times, a week apart, is that the body really is a strong instrument. I mean, it really, really is. And it hurts like the devil for a week or so, but you start getting stronger. And as long as every day you're thinking that you're going to get better is a big thing. But when people talk, you know, what do you say to a person with cancer? Basically, you say, hey, get better. I'm thinking of you, you know, and I'm thinking of you, and we'll talk about it next week or whenever, you know. It's one of the, there's not a whole lot you can just, you know, it's just it's one of those things, you know, and you work through it.
Well, ultimately it boils down to the individual's ability to cope with the circumstances.
And just feeling like, well, this is it. You read. The biggest thing, another thing that is really important, don't just listen to the doctors. Read as much as you can about whatever the sickness that you've got, and make your own decisions. You know, based on and this is not negating anything that doctors have to say. Doctors are experts in what they're doing. You listen to them, you read other things, and then you talk with a doctor and discuss it and find the thing that's best for you and for the way that you want to live. You know?
It's amazing trying to come up with the correlation between preventive health care and cancer. You know, I'm still at a loss as to how one would prevent.
I don't think you can. I don't think you can prevent it. No.
It's not. It just the systems break down.
It's going to happen. It breaks down, and things. You know, I was the healthiest guy in the world. It's just that I got cancer.
Well, well, obviously, you try and improve and increase your immune system, right?
And your chances.
In the same way that, for example, HIV-positive people are currently afflicted, or people that are living with HIV, their biggest task is to make sure that their immune system does not collapse.
Okay, that's exactly right. And we're out of time. Albert,
again,
thank you so much for coming. All you folks out there, thank you again for inviting us into your homes. It sure wouldn't be any fun without you, and I sure hope you're going to be back here with us again at the same time next week. And until then, straight ahead.